Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about Infiesto. Infiesto is a Spanish crime drama that tells the story of a pair of detectives named Samuel Garcia and Marta Castro. At the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, a woman who was missing for months suddenly turns up and is hospitalized, which leads to the pair being assigned to investigate what happened. As they begin digging for clues, they discover a dark conspiracy that involves many other female murder victims kidnapped in similar circumstances like the one who escaped. Garcia and Castro must race to solve the mystery and find the culprit before more lives can be claimed. I had this movie figured out within 5 minutes of it starting, and it played out pretty much exactly like I thought it would afterward. It's not the worst crime drama / mystery movie I've seen, but it's so bland and ordinary in scope that there's not much to talk about at length. To start, the characters are uninspired. Neither Garcia nor Castro are developed all that much outside of a few scenes for each, and none of the development they experience ever ties in much with what happens in the story, so they pretty much stay the same grizzled workaholic detectives as in every other crime drama. Garcia has a sick mother and a family to provide for, but they're only seen in one scene each, so the emotional weight behind Garcia's backstory falls flat. Meanwhile, Castro has a boyfriend who's sick with COVID-19, but he's just as rarely seen, so there's not much context to go on as far as empathizing with her. The pair just aren't memorable by themselves, which is probably why they're in almost every scene together, and in this sense I do like the chemistry that they have. They're believable in the roles of no-nonsense detectives on a time crunch to solve a crime, made worse by the restrictions of a pandemic. The banter and bond they share with each other is okay as the story moves along, but that's part of the problem. The two are introduced too quickly to get a proper sense of who they are as characters, as they both go through the motions and exist only to propel the story forward, and have very little agency of their own outside of it. The other part of the problem is just how tedious the rest of the movie is. The investigation the pair undertakes is a standard missing persons case that an average primetime TV show might have, which has some benefits, but mostly downsides. I do like that the investigation itself is slower paced in nature. The movie takes time to marinate in some settings where clues are found and suspects are interrogated. It allows suspense to build, so it kept me hooked just enough to wonder who was behind everything. So there is some dramatic investment in that sense, but it's very basic in approach. The pair are easily able to either find clues or manufacture one out of thin air that points them in the right direction. There's little room for creativity in the story with how on rails it is, and there's barely any twist to keep things interesting either. Because it's unusually random with how the pair drum up clues or go about finding leads, the movie's pacing changes too. Despite its otherwise slow and linear nature, Garcia and Castro's investigation takes them from one place to another without much rhyme or reason, and meeting characters that don't serve much purpose either. It all builds toward this sinister force at play that's responsible for the missing and murdered women in the movie's events. I like where the movie is going with it, but in the end it never does much with the idea, and what is there only did the bare minimum in capturing my attention. And I feel bad for saying that, because the movie has a fantastic atmosphere behind it. The tone of the movie feels dark and oppressive, as it should when it centers around a serial killer plot, and this is helped by its aesthetic choices, although hindered by them too. The lighting in this movie is great, as it makes good use of shadows for dramatic reveals or making characters more menacing, and the ambient soundtrack is excellent in how it communicates a pervasive sense of evil that the characters are trying to make sense of. However, there was one aesthetic choice that continually baffled me when watching the movie. For some reason, every single scene in this movie has a dull sepia tone that makes everything look brown in color, and it's just so unappealing to look at. I suppose I can understand the idea of using color to further enhance the movie's world and make everything in it seem more lifeless and decrepit to go along with a murder mystery, but there was no need to do it this much. Even in broad daylight, everything looks like it's coated in a layer of dirt, which tended to distract me from the story. The action scenes do help shake up the story and remove some of the focus on the cruddy visuals though. Gunfights are violent and visceral, once again fitting in with the tone of a mature and gritty crime story, and in general the movie is good at maintaining suspense, even if the pacing isn't always the best. Just as with the mystery behind this movie's events, its COVID-19 pandemic setting also unfolds in a gradual, slow burn manner. This provides the potential for pandemic restrictions to get in the way of the investigation, and while some of that is present and I like that it's presented realistically, the movie doesn't take full advantage of this setting. There were many times throughout the movie where I found myself wondering why it needed to be set in a pandemic, as it never really connects to what happens in the story. The only reason it's there, as far as I know, is to force the two main characters to work without extra help. And this is a bit odd to me, because they're always able to call in backup at crime scenes and shootouts despite the supposed budget constraints and health restrictions. So in the end, I have no idea why the movie needed to be set in a pandemic. It could have just as easily been set outside of one, and nothing would have been lost. The only time the story ever caught me by surprise in a major way was with the plot twist near the end of the movie, although not exactly in a good way. I will admit that I didn't expect it, which I suppose is the point, but that's mostly because there wasn't any kind of solid development leading to it. The impact of both the twist and the ending afterward is muddled by everything else that comes before it. The story is competent enough, but only just enough to the point where it's able to move without stumbling, and without any sort of urgency or energy behind it, which doesn't make for an exciting watch. Overall, Infiesto is an average crime drama that isn't all that bad, but it's far from riveting. If you like crime dramas and you don't mind watching one that's more ordinary in approach, you might enjoy checking this out. I don't have any strong feelings for this movie either way, which honestly I believe is one of the worst feelings to have about a movie. It just proceeds with everything from its characters to story to concepts in such unimaginative fashion that it's hard to think of anything remotely noteworthy that it accomplishes. What did you think about this movie? Were you able to appreciate its setting and mystery more, or did you find it just as weak in presentation as I did? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Infiesto. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the Indonesian romance, Dear David. Bye bye!